Martin Celebrity Roast, coming to you from the MGM Grand Hotel in the entertainment capital of the world, Las Vegas, Nevada. Ladies and gentlemen, from the beautiful Ziegfeld Room, tonight's star-studded roast has brought together some of the world's greatest entertainers. They've come from all over the world to be here tonight, here in Las Vegas, in person.
The Woman of the Week! Your roastmaster, Dean Martin. And tonight's very special Woman of the Week, Miss Bette Davis.
Here tonight, we honor one of Hollywood's favorite citizens, Miss Bette Davis. She won 2 Academy Awards and was nominated 9 times. From the very first day she arrived in Hollywood, she made love to Cary Grant, Robert Montgomery, Henry Fonda, and then she got into pictures. It wasn't easy. Jack Warner happened to take a liking to her, and after several meetings, he sent Bette for her first test. The result was positive, and they named the kid Jack Jr. She was a big star and big at the box office. She suffered her first heartbreak in 1938. David O. Selznick tested her for Gone with the Wind, but Mr. Selznick didn't think she was good enough and gave the part to Butterfly McQueen. But soon Bette got over it, went back to Warner Brothers, and made Warner Brothers what it is today, broke. What a life this woman has lived. Bette's made over 90 movies, and she has 3 children. She would have had more children, but she didn't have time for retakes. But movie fans will never forget Bette. To this day, they still gather around her footprints in front of Grauman's Chinese and say, boy, she had big feet. Bette, there's a lot of your friends and admirers who couldn't be here tonight, but they've sent telegrams, and I'd like to read some of them to you now. Here's one. Who's this one for? Dear Miss Davis, I don't mind when I see pictures of you clutching your Oscars, but would you please keep your hands off mine? Signed, Mrs. Oscar Homoloka. Here's one from Harold Donaldson of Detroit. Dear Miss Davis, my wife and I just saw your film, Whatever Happened to Baby Jane? Could you settle an argument for us in private life? Are you and Joan Crawford really brothers? Please. All right. Finally, here's one that reads, Dear Bette, I have loved all your movies, but I could never figure out why they cast you in The Virgin Queen instead of me, signed Liberace. Well, getting away. It's always nice having Pat Buttram on the show. Pat comes from Texas, where he lives on a ranch called the Lazy S. He named it that because that's what his wife always calls him. Ladies and gentlemen, a fine comedian, Mr. Pat Buttram.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Martin. I used to love all of your movies, Miss Davis. You was always crying and crying real tears, too. And if I'd have just known you then, I could have saved those tears, and I'd have had enough salt licks for every cow on my farm. But your movies is always such good, clean pictures. The whole family could see them. That was great. Not like these sex movies they got today. I saw one of them sex films the other night, and I was really confused. I never saw 5 people in love before. But you know, Miss Davis, nobody could ever play a woman of the streets like you did. The only trouble was you never came around my neighborhood, you know? But I guess Hollywood is still Hollywood. I mean, where else Could you find a place that has signs like last massage parlor before the freeway? And thank you, and bless your little heart.
Thank you, Pat. Not many people know this, but Betty Davis has a twin sister. We brought her here tonight all the way from Lowell, Massachusetts. Would you all please welcome Miss Bessie Davis? How do you do, Miss Davis? Tell me, who do you and Betty look like more, your mother or your father?
Oh, like my Peter.
Oh. What do you do for a living?
I'm a potter.
What sort of pots do you make?
Pewter.
Incidentally, what was the weather like back in Lowell, Massachusetts?
Oh, it was starting to pitter. Now, you must excuse me. I have to go buy a gun.
What sort of gun?
What else? A repeater. As you all know, that was the wonderful actress, Miss Kay Medford. Nipsey Russell is a very popular comedian. When he visited Alabama recently, the governor met him at the plane with a rope. Here's Nipsey Russell.
It is said that the Lord made woman last, a divine and wonderful plan, because he didn't want anybody talking him to death while he was making man. That I am eternally grateful to Miss Bette Davis, because had she not made the movie, Sweet, Sweet Charlotte, Hush, Hush, Sweet Charlotte, I would not be able to live where I now reside. I saw that picture, I turned white as a sheet, and I moved into the neighborhood before he got by. So in conclusion, to this illustrious lady of the screen, I say, when we get to heaven, if you're not there, we'll write your name on the golden stair. If you're still not there on Judgment Day, and though we think you went the other way, just to prove that our love is true, we'd come to hell to say good wishes to you.
Even though next we have Miss Joyce Haber, columnist for the Los Angeles Times. Every morning, the newspaper boy throws a copy of the L.A. Times on the front lawn, on my front lawn, and I don't like it because when it hits me, it wakes me up. Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Joyce Haber.
Thank you, Dean. People have been saying Betty was never much of a sex symbol, as, for example, Raquel Welch is. But can Raquel Welch act? Not like Bette Davis. All Raquel does is just stand there, like two bumps on a log. Bette Davis never was a raving beauty, and Joan Crawford would be the first to admit that. But Betty was the queen of Hollywood, back in the days when queens were still ladies, and Joan Crawford was king. And when Betty won the Oscar, didn't Joan Crawford generously offer to go up the aisle and accept for her? And when the owner of Pepsi-Cola proposed to Joan Crawford, didn't Betty offer to go up the aisle and accept for her? So there she sits, Miss Bette Davis, Nelson, Farnsworth, Sherry, Merrill. Just think about it. 4 husbands. But she's just like you, Dean. She can't wait to get her hands on a 5th.
Thank you, Miss Haber. I think everyone will agree that Vincent Price is one of the most popular actors in our industry. Vincent got started in movies playing the Invisible Man, and I still can't see him. Ladies and gentlemen, a fine actor, Mr. Vincent Price.
Thank you, Dean. Thank you. I'm honored to pay tribute to Miss Bette Davis, the actress who became a Hollywood star the hard way. She wasn't naked. She wasn't black. She didn't even know Kung Fu. Kung Fu, Dean, that isn't an Italian curse, no. Now, tonight I'm here as one of Bette Davis's greatest fans, and I'd like to talk about some of her most memorable films. She made her first picture back in 1932. I was a child. It was called The Way Back Home. It didn't do too well at the box office until it was re-released under a new title, Sexual Freedom in Denmark. In 1934, she starred in Of Human Bondage, for which Bette was nominated for an Oscar. She played a woman of the streets who said to Leslie Howard, "Why, you dirty bleep, you can take your bleeping money and shove it." And for that kind of language, she became known as the first lady of the American screen. You know, Bette has always suffered in every picture she has ever made. When I appeared with her in Elizabeth and Essex, she gave up her beauty. In Dark Victory, she gave up her eyesight. And in The Virgin Queen, she gave up her hobby. But in 1950, Bette received another Academy nomination for All About Eve. This was a 3-handkerchief picture. And in 1962, Whatever Happened to Baby Jane? That was a 3-diaper picture. In this one, she appeared with her old friend, Joan Crawford. Miss Crawford has always been envious of Bette's voluptuous figure. As a matter of fact, Joan used to borrow Bette's bras to use for shoulder pads. And then in 1963, there was Hush. Thank you, Letty Litton. But in 1963, there was Hush, Hush, Sweet Charlotte, and Bette Davis entered my field. Horror films, yes. But that's not new for you, Bette, because some critics have always found your pictures horrors. Yes, it's true that many reviewers have knocked Bette, but then that's how you measure a great star, by her knockers.
Well, Vincent almost didn't make it here tonight. His hearse broke down on the freeway. Army Archer is one of the top columnists in Hollywood today. I never miss his column. I never read it, and I never miss it. Ladies and gentlemen, the Dean of Daily Variety, Mr. Army Archer.
Thank you, Dean. Bette, such a pleasure. Well, Bette Davis is still the definitive expert on portraying various queens. She played Mary, Queen of Scots, and Queen Victoria, and Queen Elizabeth. And now I hear she wants to play Truman Capote. But there's still a very bright future for Miss Davis because with the advent of television, a whole new field of unemployment is opening up for her. But her mind still burns with that old ambition. Every time she sees one of those old pictures on the Late Late Show, she says, someday, that's going to be me up there.
Thank you, Arnie. Oh, by the way, Betty, here's a telegram I forgot to read before. It's from the, where is it from? Huh? Which one is it? It's from, the National Association of Tobacco Manufacturers. Dear Miss Davis, we want to thank you for promoting the use of cigarettes in your films. No other actress swings her butt the way you do. Oh, it seems we stood and talked like this before. Oh, and now, Betty, we have a special treat for you. A lady who was your closest friend when you were both girls growing up together in Lowell, Massachusetts. Your lives have taken very different turns. You went to the theater and became a star. She went into a convent and became a nun. Would you all please welcome Sister Maria Teresa?
Martin. You know, it's so wonderful to see you again, dear Bette. Yes, we have indeed gone our separate ways. You see, you live in Hollywood, and I live in Lowell, Massachusetts, in the convent of St. Peter. Peter. I went with the Carmelite sisters, and you went with the Warner Brothers. And yet, I like to think that I have been as successful in my life's work as you have been in yours. In 30 years as a nun, I have only been reprimanded by the Mother Superior once. She didn't like the way I handled my... You know, sweet Bette, I've seen every film you've ever made. I especially love the distinctive way you have of smoking a cigarette. And you know, it proves to me that deep down, you and I are still basically the same. Neither one of us can kick the habit.
Thank you. That was a very talented comedian, Miss Barbara Heller. Thank you very, very much. And now it's my pleasure to introduce the best friend a motion picture camera ever had, Mr. Henry Fonda.
I've been close to Bette Davis for over 40 years.
They told me to say that.
Except I was never close to you. You wouldn't look at me.
I got the cigarette burns to prove it. In 1938, I worked opposite her in Jezebel when she won the Oscar for portraying a daughter of the Old South. It was a novelty picture for Bette. She didn't die at the end. I was amazed because Betty's great at that. I've never seen any actress put so much life into her dying. In Jezebel, there was a scene that showed the burning of New Orleans. The producer didn't intend to burn the city down, but there was Bette with those damn cigarettes in all fairness, I must say this about Bette. She'd never do a picture if cheapness and vulgarity were written into the script. She felt it was up to her to bring that to the But as big a star as Bette Davis is in America, she's practically worshipped in Europe. Once a year, she receives a letter from the Bolshoi Ballet designating her as their favorite actress. Every year, it's the same old Bolshoi. Yes, Bette has made many unforgettable pictures. I wish I could remember the names of some of them. But believe it or not, with all the celluloid tearjerkers she's made, not one of them ended up losing money. I'll tell you why. They were all recently purchased by Dr. West. You don't know Dr. West? He had them melted down into toothbrush handles. And therein lies the irony. Somewhere in this country tonight, a sad Bette Davis film is leaving a happy taste in somebody's mouth.
It's time for Howard Cosell, known to most of us as Supermouth. Next week, John Cameron Swayze is going to strap a Timex to Howard's tongue. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Howard Cosell.
I do think that every one of you knows that Bette Davis is a star of gargantuan magnitude. But what precisely, Nipsey, does the concept star signify? What is a star? A star is a lady who gets $1 million for doing on the screen, as you well know, Dean, what certain other ladies get only $20 for doing. A star is a tireless bundle of energy who gets up out of bed at 5 a.m. every morning and goes home. A star? Well, a star is someone who changes her name, changes her hair, changes her nose, changes her bust line, then divorces her husband because he's not the man she married. May I tell you something, my dear? Bette Davis, in the whole history of the cinema and show business in this country, my dear, you are a star.
Incidentally, Howard just had his book published called Cosell by Cosell. It's gotten some great reviews and you'll love it, so get a copy yourself. And now, ladies and gentlemen, may I present the woman of the week, the First Lady of Hollywood, Miss Bette Davis.
Thank you. Thank you, Dean. I was thinking about Mr. Cosell's description of a star. And he ended by saying, Miss Davis, you are really a star. I think I have had a great deal more fun being the kind of star you described than the one I was. I had no guts to do it that way. Thank you, Dean, very much. I've certainly had a lot of fun tonight. It would have been nice to have some of my old male co-stars with me, but then they'd have to hold the roast at the Hollywood Wax Museum. Actually, there is one of my co-stars here tonight. I did not recognize you without your camera, Hank. Although we've never worked together, Vincent, I've seen all your horror movies, in which you're always torturing people, but tonight you outdid yourself. I just read where Vincent is making a horror movie based on the life of Howard Cosell. The film is called The Planet of the Toops. Will Rogers once said, I never met a man I didn't like. Obviously, Mr. Rogers never met Howard Cosell. I want to thank Nipsey Russell for being here. Nipsey is one of our great civil rights leaders. As a matter of fact, Stephen Fetchit once called Nipsey an Uncle Tom. Oh, by the way, Dean, congratulations on your recent marriage. Dean is the only man I know who ever took cue cards on his honeymoon. As I said, it's been a lot of fun tonight. And looking at this dais, I can only quote a line from one of my movies, What a Dump.
I want to thank my wonderful guests for being here tonight, and my very special thanks to a great star, Miss Bette Davis. I'll never forget the first time I saw her. I had just come to Hollywood trying to get started. One night I was standing outside a theater on Hollywood Boulevard where they were premiering one of her pictures. When the picture was over, Miss Davis came out, and I pushed my way through the crowd and ran up to her, and I said, Miss Davis, you're the greatest. And she spoke to me. I'll never forget what she said. Get lost, meathead. Good night, everybody. I'm on my way home, Captain. Warm up the hot chocolate.